The courtroom was so still, you could practically hear the tick of the ancient clock on the wall, each tick booming louder than the last. The room was heavy, near choking, thick with tension and unspoken realities. Everyone's eyes were fixed on one person. Robyn, she perched on the edge of her chair, her hands shaking, holding a crumpled tissue that had already become damp with tears. Her skin was white, her lips trembling, her eyes shifting between the judge and the man she'd once defended with all of her soul. Kody? Kody himself sat mere feet away, arms crossed tightly over his chest, his jaw clenched so tightly a vein throbbed on his temple. His eyes blazed with anger, not a trace of softness remaining in them. For so long he had commanded allegiance, compliance, silence, and Robyn, above all others, had given it. She was the one who had stayed with him when the rest deserted him, the one who had believed him when he spoke, borne his weight, and taken his rage in silence. But here, now, before this cold courtroom packed with strangers, cameras, attorneys, and the women who had once been her sisters, she was about to do the unspeakable. The bailiff's voice boomed through the silence. "Robyn Brown, stand up please." She stood up slowly, hesitantly, as if her legs would give out beneath her at any second. Her footsteps echoed across the hardwood floor, each one heavier than the one before it. She sat in the witness stand, fiddled with the microphone, and attempted to calm her breathing. For a second, she almost said no, as if the words would never pass her lips. But then her lawyer moved forward, saying something we couldn't catch, and she nodded slightly, her eyes brimming over with unshed tears. The judge's voice was calm, measured, but gentle. "Mrs. Brown, you've been summoned as a witness. You are sworn in. Do you know the importance of that?" Robyn nodded, but her eyes flashed, almost as if involuntarily, in the direction of Kody, the man she loved. The man who had promised her family, protection, fidelity. But all she saw standing before her was a man glaring back at her, with only fury and betrayal in his gaze. The first question emerged, quick and pointed. "Mrs. Brown, was Kody ever coercive in asking you to stay quiet about issues regarding the family finances and personal conflicts?" Robyn's breath sucked into her throat. She paused. Kody sat up straight, his hand clasped around the edge of the table, his attorney whispering angrily at his side. She had defended him for years. But today things were different. Her lips parted, quivering. "Yes." There was a gasp in the courtroom. Christine's hand flew to her mouth. Janelle shook her head, looking as if she couldn't quite believe it. Meri closed her eyes, struggling not to cry. And Kody's face contorted with fury, his body convulsing as though he might jump out of his seat. The bailiff stepped forward warily. But before anybody else could say a word, Robyn's attorney pushed a button. There was a slight click in the speakers, and then static, and then a voice. A voice each and every one of them knew immediately. Kody's voice. It was cruel, biting, full of venom. "You don't get to ask me questions. You don't get to betray me. If you ever mention what I've done with the money, with the accounts, I'll cut you out. All of you, you'll have nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing." The noise remained suspended there like a cloud of smoke. The room stopped moving. Jurors glared in shock, their faces pale. Others leaned away as though the actual tape was heavy. Even the judge squirmed in his seat. Robyn buried her face, weeping. The tears flowed freely now, her body trembling under the suffocating load of reality. She had lived in secrets for years, kept things hidden, told herself it was love. But love does not sound like that. Love does not threaten. Love does not kill. Kody's voice came through again in the recording, taunting, vicious. "You're all replaceable. You hear me? Replaceable." The gasp this time was louder, roar, filled with disbelief and disgust. Christine's eyes brimmed with tears, but her expression hardened with vindication. Meri's shoulders slumped in quiet devastation. Janelle's hands gripped the table so tightly her knuckles went white. Kody pushed forward in his seat, his face flushed with anger, but his lawyer pulled him back down, whispering hysterically. It was too late. The damage had been done. The mask had slipped. The whole courtroom had overheard the man behind the well-groomed exterior. And yet, in spite of all of this, Robyn's voice trembled as she spoke into the mic, her voice barely audible. I never wanted to say this, but I can't lie anymore. I can't keep covering for him. There was silence after that was almost palpable. The weight of her words crushed every person in that room. Is the narrative they believed they knew about loyalty, about unity, about family. It was crumbling before their very eyes. Kody just sat there, looking at her, his expression etched with hatred and disbelief. The man who had once held dominion over every detail of their existence, now sat helpless, trapped by his own tongue. And for the first time, Robyn wasn't coming to his defense. She was revealing him. And here's the scary part. What you're going to learn next will alter all that you believed you knew about this family. The judge cleared his throat, attempting to restore order in the room. But the damage was done. A storm had erupted, one that no gavel could stem. What was to be a fight over custody and property was now unraveling into something much more sinister. A disclosure of betrayal, manipulation, and secrets that had been hidden for years. Christine's gaze snapped to Robyn, a cross between shock and gratitude. Meri wiped away her tears, muttering something under her breath that only Janelle could interpret. And Robyn, her body shaking with the effort, appeared lighter somehow, like a woman who had at last gathered the courage to shake off the bars of a cage she wasn't even aware she was trapped in until it clicked into place. Kody wasn't finished though. His chest was rising and falling with rage, his fists pounded on the table, and his voice finally pierced the bedlam, bitter and venomous. You think that's going to make a difference? You think they'll listen to you instead of me? But the jury had already heard the tape. They had witnessed the expression on Robyn's face. They had sensed the change in the room, and deep within, even Kody recognized something irreparable had just been done. The gavel came down with force. Order in the court, the judge barked. But order was the last thing this court would know. For when loyalty fractures, when reality shatters the deception, the conflagration cannot be halted. In what Robyn is soon to unveil next will turn this family forever. A tension in the courtroom that was like a storm cloud, hovering just over everyone's head, poised to erupt at any moment. The judge had already come down on the gavel twice, but the gallery murmurs would not fully quiet. Folks mouthed to one another, glancing back and forth between Kody's angry face and Robyn's shaking figure. It felt like the air itself was aware that something gigantic had just changed. Christine leaned forward in her seat, her gaze tightening on Kody. She wasn't cheering, not yet, but there was the glimmer of relief on her face. For years, she had been dismissed, accused of lying, told her truth didn't count. But now, here it was, proof, gushing out of the speakers, raw and undeniable. Proof that his words had been weapons all this time. Janelle's stance was rigid. Every fiber in her body wound tight. She had always been practical, attempting to maintain harmony, attempting to maintain the family like some delicate machine. But now, witnessing Robyn dismantle years of restraint with a solitary unsteady confession, Janelle understood the machine had been broken longer than she'd ever conceded. Meri remained silent, her eyes on the floor. She did not get satisfaction, vindication, only sorrow. She was the first to feel Kody's rejection, the first to be discarded. And yet, somehow in a warped way, she had still held on to the possibility that maybe, just perhaps, the man she once loved was still hiding somewhere in there. But the voice on the tape was not a husband's voice. It was the voice of a man who tore down, not built, who endangered, not safeguarded. Robyn moved uncomfortably in her seat on the stand, tears streaming down her face. The burden of what she had just confessed weighed on her shoulders. But there was also a glint of something new in her eyes. Determination. She wasn't free yet, but for the first time in years, she wasn't entirely trapped. Kody leaned into his attorney, whispering angrily. The attorney jotted down notes. His jaw clenched, his face tense. He had anticipated battling a custody battle, a money issue, perhaps even allegations of favoritism. But not this. A tape. A breach of trust by Robyn. A courtroom turning on them before they'd even really started. The judge then leaned in finally, voice firm but authoritative. Mrs. Brown, you've acknowledged that Mr. Brown intimidated you into silence when it came to finances. This tape attests to that. Is there more? The courtroom all breathed collectively. Robyn's lips wobbled, her hands twirling the crumpled tissue. For an instant she seemed on the verge of breaking under the strain. Kody's glare cut across her, challenging her to continue, threatening without saying so. And then she nodded. Yes, there's more. The sentences cut through the air, raw and irrepressible. A shock wave ran through the courtroom. Christine's eyes grew wide. Janelle moved forward, and Meri finally raised her eyes. Even the jurors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, getting ready for whatever was coming next. If you believe the recording was the most surprising thing, hold on to me, because what Robyn uncovers next turns this courtroom from tight to explosive. Christine's attorney, a keen-eyed woman with a steady but implacable voice, stood up. Mrs. Brown, by more do you mean other instances of financial withholding or other types of coercion? Robyn's fingers shook more violently. Both. Kody's fist crashed against the table, making a number of people in the gallery leap. His lawyer caught his arm, whispering something aggressively under his breath. But Kody's rage was uncontainable. His face burned red, his teeth clenched so tightly it was a miracle they didn't shatter. The judge glared at him sternly. Mr. Brown, one more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. Kody pushed himself back into his chair, but his gaze never wavered from Robyn. They seemed to pierce her with a venom that was more potent than words. Robyn sniffed, rubbing her eyes. He made me lie. About the accounts, about the properties, about how money was being managed. He told me that if I ever spoke out, if I ever said anything against him, he'd cut me off totally. He told me I wouldn't be able to take care of my children, that I'd lose everything. So I kept my mouth shut. I lied and told myself I was keeping my family safe. Her voice broke, then firmed. But I wasn't doing that. I was enabling him. The room burst into muted gasps. The gallery hummed in amazement. The jurors' pens scribbled wildly across their notepads. Christine glanced at Janelle, both women mutely recognizing the magnitude of what they were being told. Christine's attorney nodded deliberately, taking a few steps forward from his position. Mrs. Brown, did Mr. Brown ever make such threats against the other wives? Robyn's eyes darted to the women sitting in chairs across the room. She paused, lips opening as if words would strangle her coming out. At last, she breathed a soft yes. Christine shut her eyes, agony and vindication warring on her face. Janelle swore under her breath, shaking her head. Meri's eyes overflowed again, her lips clamped together. The lawyer's voice hardened. Can you elaborate? Robyn took a trembling breath, her words hardly above a whisper. He would tell them that they were nothing without him, that they couldn't survive without him. He would put us against each other, make us think we had to fight for his approval. He told us it was the only way to keep the family together, but it was the only way to keep us in his control. The room began to slant with the force of her admission. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about power, manipulation, control. Kody's attorney sprang to his feet. Objection, speculation, hearsay. The judge held up a hand, his tone authoritative. Overruled. Proceed. Christine's attorney didn't hesitate. She pressed on, her tone calm. Mrs. Brown, do you feel safe testifying here today? Robyn's eyes darted over to Kody once more, then returned to the attorney. She swallowed hard. No, but I have to. The words cracked something wide open in the room. For the first time, Robyn wasn't speaking as Kody's devoted defender. She wasn't protecting him, rationalizing his actions, or making apologies. She was standing up to him, even though the fear was still written across every faceline. And here's where it gets even worse. The courtroom has not yet heard the complete extent of what's in that recording. The attorney returned to the table, retrieving a flash drive from a little folder. She raised it for all in court to witness. Your Honor, we possess an entire recording that makes Mrs. Brown's testimony even more substantiating. It has several conversations over some months, during which Mr. Brown makes threats and admissions of financial manipulation and emotional coercion. We asked to be allowed to play it to the jury. The judge pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, his face impassive. He looked at Kody's attorney. Do you object? Kody's attorney sprang to his feet once more. Oh, absolutely, Your Honor. This is prejudicial, intrusive, and... But the judge held up his hand, silencing him. Objection noted, but the probative value outweighs the prejudice. The recording will be admitted. Gasps filled the air once more. Kody pounded his fist into his thigh, his whole body shuddering with anger. He snarled at his lawyer, but the lawyer's face had turned pale. He knew the implications. The bailiff picked up the flash drive and handed it to the court technician. The lights fell a little for a moment as the screen came to life. The first to echo through the room was Kody's, loud and poisonous. "You think you can survive without me? You think any of you are capable of making it on your own? You're nothing without me, nothing." Christine winced, tears brimming in her eyes. Meri turned away, unable to bear watching. Janelle's fists curled on the table, her entire body tensed in rage. Robyn covered her face, crying silently while the recording played on. "You'll never leave," Kody's voice spat. "Because you can't. And if you try, I'll take everything from you. Every penny, every child. You'll have nothing left but regret." The room was held in a frozen state, each and every person within it entranced by the cold viciousness of the voice, emanating from the speakers. Even the judge's face hardened, his jaw clenching. Robyn cried openly now, her body shaking, her tissue ineffective against the deluge of tears. But she didn't flee, she didn't retract it, she sat there, allowing the truth pour into the open for all to hear. And in the corner of the room, Kody's mask was broken. He seemed smaller somehow, lessened. The man who had controlled so much before now sat bounded by his own words. The recorder clicked off, leaving behind only silence. The judge cleared his throat, his voice calm. "We will go into recess for a short time. Court will resume in 20 minutes. The gavel fell, and the courtroom erupted into pandemonium. What just went on in that courtroom is only the start. The storm is about to get much darker. When the court was reconvened by the judge, the room was still reeling with the recording. The crowd had murmured angrily at recess, the tension seething with incredulity and rumor. Some slumped forward in chairs, as if reluctant to miss a word. Others reclined, rubbing their heads, attempting to absorb what had been told. But all eyes flicked forward when the bailiff commanded everyone to stand. The tempest was just beginning. Robyn returned to the stand slowly, her body trembling. She looked like she hadn't moved during the break, like she'd sat there frozen in her own thoughts, replaying Kody's words over and over in her mind. Her hands twisted the shredded tissue between her fingers, the small scraps falling to the floor unnoticed. Christine and Janelle leaned in toward each other for a moment, whispering. They glanced at Robyn, not with ire but with something gentler, compassion. They had hated her for years, thinking she had selected to be Kody's favorite, his partner against them. But what they saw here wasn't a co-conspirator. It was another victim, someone who was too far inside the cage to understand that she was imprisoned. Kody, meanwhile, resembled a man coming apart. His tie dangled open, his hair a bit rumpled from running his fingers through it repeatedly. He slumped in his chair, swearing angrily to his attorney, his gaze still fixed on Robyn with a hatred that caused several jurors to squirm in their seats. The judge's voice rang out in the room. "Mrs. Brown, before we proceed, I need to ask you again. Are you sure you wish to testify further? You are under no compulsion beyond that required." Robyn slowly raised her head, her voice raw but firm. "I want to go on." There was a ripple in the air. Christine's attorney moved forward once more, her voice steady but cold. "Mrs. Brown, earlier you agreed that Mr. Brown coerced you to keep quiet about money issues. You've also agreed to threats and emotional blackmail. Can you explain to the court when this most recently happened?" Robyn's face paled, her lips pursed together, quivering before she replied. "It was 3 months ago. He summoned me to the study. He told me Christine was causing more trouble, that Janelle had questions regarding the accounts. He informed me that I needed to keep them in order. That if I didn't, if I ever revealed to them what he was actually doing, he would take everything from me. That I would lose my children, that I would be left alone and destitute." Gasps echoed in the gallery. Christine was motionless, her fingers clasped around the table edge. Janelle set her jaw, glaring. Meri shut her eyes, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Kody knocked his hand on the table, his voice ringing out. "That's a lie." The judge hammered the gavel down. "Mr. Brown, one more outburst and I will have you removed from this courtroom." Kody leaned back, panting, his glare never wavering from Robyn. Christine's attorney continued. "Mrs. Brown, you've explained that you felt keeping quiet was guarding your family. When did you realize it was in fact tearing it apart. Robyn's tears fell again, her words cracking. When I heard that recording, listening to it again, hearing his voice like everyone else hears it, I understood I wasn't keeping anyone safe. I was assisting him to injure all of us. Her words landed with the impact of a stone thrown into water, sending waves out that eventually caused the whole room to vibrate with their weight. The jurors wrote frantically, the gallery gasped, and even the judge's hard face relaxed. And this is the truth. Robyn's admission doesn't only reveal Kody, it starts to rewrite the whole history of this family. Christine leaned forward, her words soft though they rang clear. Why now, Robyn? Why wait to tell the truth until now? The courtroom quieted once more. Even the judge permitted the question, feeling the weight of her response. Robyn spoke to Christine, her voice weak but laced with truth. Because I'm sick of being scared, and because I see what it did to you, to all of us. He made me think you were the enemy, but you weren't. You were just making it, like me. Christine's eyes welled with tears. For an instant their years of bitterness split, something akin to comprehension showing through. But Kody would not let the moment pass. He leapt to his feet, voice thundering. You think this changes things? She's lying 'cause she's weak. She always was. The bailiff stepped forward, but the judge's gavel fell a second time. Mr. Brown, sit down at once, or I will have you removed. Kody's attorney pulled him back into his chair, his tone low and menacing. Kody's face flushed red, his hands trembling as he pointed at Robyn. You'll regret it. You hear me? You'll regret it. The courtroom fell silent as death. The threat was palpable, hanging in the air like a challenge. The judge's tone was steel. Mr. Brown, one more word, and you will be in contempt. But the damage was already done. Everyone had heard it. Everyone had seen it. The mask had slipped again. And this is the moment where viewers realize the courtroom isn't just about evidence anymore. It's about survival. Christine's lawyer didn't waste the opportunity. Your Honor, Mr. Brown's behavior speaks for itself. This isn't just about finances. It's about intimidation and fear. And it has gone on long enough. The judge sat back in his chair, a serious look on his face. He nodded slowly. Proceed. The lawyer turned back to Robyn. Mrs. Brown, did Mr. Brown ever show favoritism towards you, as a means of controlling the other wives? Robyn trembled, her body shaking as she replied. Yes, he said I was his true wife. The others were just responsibilities. He said, if I remained faithful, I would always have more money, more security, more love, and I believed him. For a long time I believed him. Christine gasped quietly. Janelle nodded her head, her face a blend of anger and sorrow. Meri bent her head, tears streaming silently down her hands. Robyn's voice broke. But it wasn't love. It was manipulation.
No.
He manipulated me to hurt them. And he manipulated them to control me. The room was quiet once more. Even the scratching of pens ceased. Everyone was transfixed, every ear leaning forward in hopes of catching every word. The attorney inched forward, her voice barely soft. And how do you feel now? Here, speaking these words aloud. Robyn blurted an upturned look, her eyes wide and red, scared, but free. The silence that came next was the burning kind that sears itself into memory, the kind that changes something irreparably in the atmosphere. Kody sat nailed to his seat, his anger seething just below the surface. But for once he kept quiet. The judge cleared his throat. We will recess testimony here for the day. Court will reconvene tomorrow morning. The gavel fell, but nobody stirred. They were still trying to get their minds around what they'd just seen. Christine nudged Janelle forward and spoke softly. Tomorrow everything changes. And in the witness stand across the room, Robyn slumped, her body spent but her spirit, for the first time in years, free. But here's the truth. What Robyn hasn't said yet is even darker. And tomorrow when she speaks again, the courtroom will never be the same. The following morning, the courtroom was full to capacity. News of Robyn's testimony had circulated, and now there were no more seats left to take. Reporters filled the rear, their cameras at the ready, their pens scribbling even before the judge appeared. The air was biting with expectation, as if the walls themselves were preparing for what was to be revealed. Kody arrived with a new type of anger in his step. He was dressed immaculately once more, tie knotted tight, jaw clenched,
but eyes revealing the tempest within. He did not glance at Robyn. He did not glance at Christine. He fixed his gaze straight ahead, as if a man going into combat, already certain of his triumph. Robyn, on the other hand, seemed smaller than ever. She perched on the witness stand, her hands locked tightly in front of her, her lips in a tight line. But something was different about her eyes. A spark of determination, insistent but subtle, like a candle that will not be blown out. As soon as the judge signaled the session to begin, Christine's attorney did not hesitate. She moved forward, a little black flash drive clutched in her hand, grasping it carefully between her fingers like a weapon. "Your Honor," she asserted, "we do have further evidence to present. This recording was anonymously given to us, but we have confirmed its authenticity. It is indeed the voice of Mr. Brown." The gallery came alive with whispers. Kody's face paled before flushing red once more, lips compressing into a thin, menacing smile. His attorney objected at once, protesting hearsay, fabrication, invasion of privacy. But the judge, after examining the chain of custody, overruled. "Play the recording," the judge instructed. The technician plugged in the drive, and the courtroom became still, so dense it was almost palpable. And then Kody's voice came into the room. It wasn't the clipped, combative Kody they'd heard in deposition. This was Kody behind closed doors, raw, unvarnished, brutal. "You think you can leave me, Christine? You think you can take what belongs to me? I built this family. I made you. Without me you don't exist. And if you ever try to cross me, I'll bury you in debt so deep you won't crawl out for the rest of your life." Christine's eyes grew wide, her face white but unshaking. Janelle clutched the table so tightly her knuckles became white. Meri shut her eyes, her head shaking slowly. The tape rolled on, and Robyn knows better. "She's loyal. She's the only one I can trust. She knows if she betrays me she'll lose everything too. Isn't that right, Robyn?" The courtroom turned as one toward Robyn, who sat trembling, her face ashen. She closed her eyes, as if reliving the moment, as if she could still feel the weight of those words pressing down on her. But the recording didn't stop. "I don't care what the law says. These women are mine. They will stay in line, or I'll make sure they pay." The silence that came after it was deafening. It was one of those silences that made everyone in the room know they had just heard something that could not be unheeded. Kody sprang to his feet. "That's out of context. That's personal. You can't do this." The judge's gavel came down. "Mr. Brown, you will sit down." But Kody could not hold himself in check. His voice boomed around the court. "She's lying. They're all lying. This is a witch hunt." The judge scrunched up his face, glare sharpening. "One more tirade, Mr. Brown, and I will find you in contempt." Kody's attorney pulled him down once more, speaking urgently in his ear. But it was too late. The harm was done. Everyone had heard the anger, the threats, the possessiveness. Everyone had seen the cracks in his mask become a gaping chasm. Christine's attorney did not hesitate. "Mrs. Brown," she asked quietly, looking back at Robyn, "is this the voice you lived with on a daily basis?" Robyn's lips quivered, her tears falling down her cheeks. She nodded once, her whisper barely audible. "Yes." "Is this the man who instructed you that loyalty would shield you?" Another nod, another tear. "Yes." "And is this the man who instructed you against the other wives?" Robyn's gaze darted to Christine, to Janelle, to Meri. "Yes." The jurors wrote frantically, their faces set. The audience hummed once more, a shudder of anger and sympathy spreading across the room like a tide. Kody remained stone-faced, his jaw clenched so tight it seemed to crack. His gaze was fixed on Robyn with a look of fury that could have melted steel. Christine's attorney made the knockout blow. "So tell me, Mrs. Brown, now that you've heard his voice reproduced, now that everyone in the world has heard it too, do you still think he ever loved you?" The words hung there, cutting as a sliver of glass. Robyn stood paralyzed, her mouth open, but nothing emerged. The silence was agonizing, the whole courtroom waiting with bated breath. Finally, Robyn whispered, so faint it was almost lost in the tension. The word cracked through the air like thunder. Christine gasped. Janelle's eyes filled with tears. Even Meri's stoic face broke,
her hand covering her mouth as she sobbed quietly. And Kody looked like he had been struck by lightning. His mouth fell open, his entire body rigid with shock and fury. The judge rapped the gavel. Order, we will recess for today. But the gallery was already in disarray. Reporters surged out to call in their headlines. Spectators murmured wildly, some gazing at Robyn with pity, others at Kody with contempt. Robyn sat slumped in the witness chair, her face smeared with tears, her body shaking but somehow freer, as if a tremendous burden had finally been released. Kody, though, relaxed back slowly, his lips pulling into something between snarl and grin. His eyes narrowed, focusing on Christine, then on Robyn. And in that moment, it was obvious Kody wasn't done. Not by a long way, because on the morrow, the battle would not be of words on a tape. It would be of who was left standing after surviving the aftermath. When the final secret was exposed, the trial resumed. On its fourth day under a turbulent sky, rain pounded against the courthouse windows, thunder crashing very softly in the distance, as if the heavens were getting ready for the mayhem about to ensue. Kody arrived before everybody else, escorted by his attorney, his face a mask of icy resolve. The fury of the previous day was gone. He now seemed calm. Too calm, there was something sinister in his calmness, as if he had resigned himself to the fight and equipped himself with an unseen weapon that others could not detect. Christine came in with her lawyer, calm but strained. Janelle trailed in after her, shoulders set, and Meri close behind, mute and expressionless. Robyn brought up the rear, her movements uncertain, eyes red from another night of crying. The courtroom fell silent as she entered. Newsmen leaning forward, pens already scribbling. The judge banged his gavel. Proceed. Kody's attorney did not waste a single moment. Standing up from his chair, he walked slowly back and forth, his voice silky smooth and rehearsed. Ladies and gentlemen, what you have witnessed up to now has been an act, an expertly mounted play intended to distort the truth. But today, we will present you with the truth. Today you will witness the extent to which these women go to destroy my client. He pointed at Christine and the others, his tone heavy with disdain. Bitterness, resentment, revenge. That is what motivates this case, not justice. Christine's attorney jumped up to object, but the judge let the opening continue. And then came the surprise. Your Honor, said Kody's attorney, the defense would like to have a new witness, one whose voice has been conveniently muffled until today. The courtroom doors at the rear creaked open. A figure entered. Gasps erupted throughout the gallery. It was Dayton, Robyn's eldest son. Robyn sat still in her seat, her face paling, Christine's jaw dropped, her heart plummeting. Even Kody couldn't help himself give a slight smirk. Dayton strolled to the stand, trembling in his hands as he was sworn in. He did not look at his mother. He did not glance at Christine. His eyes remained locked onto the floor. Dayton, Kody's attorney began in smooth tones. Describe to us what a man your father is at home. Be honest with us. Robyn muttered under her breath, making the word no with her lips. Dayton swallowed hard. His voice shook. He's strict. But he's not what they say. Kody relaxed back in his chair, satisfaction etched on his face. Dayton went on, his words jerky but distinct. He raised us. He took care of us. He made sacrifices. And these women, they're distorting things. They don't know him like I do. He's not a monster. The gallery rang out with mutterings. Journalists wrote wildly, their eyes wide in the outrage of this revelation. Robyn's palm slapped up over her face, the tears streaming freely. No, no. She breathed once more, her head shaking frantically. Christine ground her fists together, struggling to remain in command. Kody's attorney drove the point home. So these allegations, these tapes, would you call them exaggerations, fabrications? Dayton faltered, his voice cracking. Yes. A dagger in the heart. Robyn whispered a soft sob, shoulders folding inward. Janelle put a steadying arm on Christine's arm, her jaw clenched in anger. Meri sat rigidly straight ahead, expressionless, but tears shone in her eyes. Christine's attorney came to her feet hastily, her voice crisp. Dayton, your testimony is contradictory. You testified that Mr. Brown is strict. Tell us what that is. Dayton stumbled. He glanced at Kody, who offered him the slightest of nods. A whispered instruction. It just means rules. He had rules. That's all. The lawyer for Christine persisted. Did you ever hear him yell at your mother? Did you ever hear him threaten her? His no answer. Dayton's lips quivered. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, sweat forming on his brow. At last he spoke softly. Sometimes, the attorney jumped on it. Sometimes, you mean what? But before Dayton could respond, Kody's attorney cried out in anger, leading the witness. The judge overruled, shutting down the question. Kody smiled again. The harm was done. His point was made. Even Robyn's own son opposed her. Christine's attorney recovered quickly. Fine. Well, then let's come back to the tape of yesterday. She addressed the jurors squarely. You heard the threats. You heard the intimidation. And now you see how far Mr. Brown will go to save himself, bringing his own family into this courtroom and making them testify against the truth. Ask yourself who profits from silence. Who profits from fear? The jurors stirred restlessly. The weight of the tape still lingered in the air like incense, not to be dispelled. But before Christine's attorney could go on, Kody jumped to his feet, his voice resonating. You want the truth? You think you've heard it all? You've heard nothing. The judge pounded the gavel. Mr. Brown, sit down. But Kody didn't sit. His voice boomed around the room, raw and angry. You think I'm the bad guy? You think I constructed this family just to destroy it? No. They are the traitors. Brats for traitors. They are the liars. And he cut himself short, the words dying in his throat, as though he had said too much. The room was silent, every eye upon him. And then slowly he turned his gaze back to Robyn. His eyes narrowed, dark and venomous. You, he spat, pointing a finger at her. You're the one who betrayed me. You're the reason this is happening. The courtroom gasped. Robyn flinched as though she'd been struck, her tears flowing freely now. The judge slammed the gavel again, his voice thundering. Enough! This court is adjourned until tomorrow. The gallery exploded in chaos. Reporters ran for the doors. Jurors avoided each other's eyes. Whispers filled the air like wildfire. Christine looked at Robyn, torn between anger and pity. Janelle pulled her close, whispering, "It's not over. Not yet." Meri remained still, her expression unreadable, though her hand trembled slightly on the table. And Kody was towering, his chest pumping, his eyes crazed. For the first time the mask was off, flung aside completely. What was left was something rough, something lethal, and every person in that courtroom knew it. Tomorrow would not be a struggle for truth. It would be a struggle for survival. The fifth day of the trial broke with eerie stillness. The night storm had blown itself out, leaving the courthouse lit with thin whitish light. But within, the air felt more dense than ever. No one uttered a word in the gallery, while the families entered, as if all recognized today would be the day everything changed. Robyn crept in, her skin ashen, her eyes bleary from lack of sleep. She would not meet Kody's eyes, holding a crumpled handkerchief tightly in her shaking fingers. Christine strode in with head held high, but jaw set hard. Janelle trailed behind, her gaze bitter and unflinching. Meri brought up the rear, quiet as ever, but her very presence weighed heavily. As Kody walked in, he moved like a man going to war. His gaze swept to the jurors, then Robyn, and on to the judge. No trace of uncertainty in him, just raw, seething defiance. The gavel came down. Court is now in session. Christine's attorney stood up at once. Your Honor, the plaintiffs would like to call back Robyn Brown to the stand. A ripple of murmurs ran through the gallery. Robyn stood, her breath caught. Her lawyer moved in close, whispering something, but Robyn could barely make it out. Her feet seemed to move, of their own accord, carrying her forward to the witness stand. She sat, her hands trembling as the bailiff re-swore her in. She glared hastily at Kody, long enough to catch the blaze in his scowl. It was not the gaze of a husband. It was the glint of an enemy. The testimony started softly. Christine's attorney spoke quietly, her voice nearly maternal. Robyn, you observed your son testify yesterday. How did that make you feel? Robyn's voice cracked. It destroyed me. He was afraid. He was pressured to say something he didn't want to say. Kody pounded his fist on the table. Lies, he shouted. The judge snapped. Mr. Brown, keep your temper. Robyn winced, but went on weeping openly. He's only a child, and he's been caught up in something no child should ever have to be involved in. The attorney probed softly. Robyn, you've defended Kody in the past. You've stood by him. But today you're different. What happened? The courtroom leaned forward, holding their breath. Robyn swallowed hard. Her handkerchief clutched tightly in her hand. Her voice trembled, but her words were distinct. I thought I believed in him. I thought I believed in the man. I thought he was. But what I've seen, what I've heard with my own ears, I can't keep deceiving myself. Not any longer. A buzz ran through the gallery. Kody's face contorted, his knuckles pale as he clenched the tabletop. Christine's attorney nodded, urging her on. Robyn, are you telling me that you no longer think that Kody's innocent? Robyn gasped for breath. She stood there for a frozen moment. The room went still. Even the judge inclined slightly forward. At last, in a barely audible whisper, she spoke the words. Yes, I think he's guilty. The words burst in the courtroom like a clap of thunder. Gasps, screams, the scratch of pens as journalists furiously wrote. The judge struck the gavel, calling for order. Kody leapt to his feet, his face red with fury. How dare you? After all I did for you, everything I gave up for you. His voice fractured into a bellow. You betray me here. Before them. Robyn stood up to him for the first time, her tears steady now, but her eyes blazing. No, Kody, you betrayed yourself. You betrayed this family long before I ever opened my mouth. The ensuing silence was almost deafening. Christine gazed at her, stunned. Janelle's lips drew into the faintest nod, a flicker of respect appearing in her eyes. Even Meri blinked rapidly, as though on the verge of tears. Christine's attorney did not hesitate. Robyn, you were most intimate with Kody in recent years. You witnessed how he treated all the wives. Tell the court what you witnessed. Robyn closed her eyes, breathing unevenly. I saw manipulation. I saw threats whispered behind closed doors. I saw him play us off of one another like pawns on a chessboard. And I let him do it because I thought if I remained faithful I could keep my children safe. I was wrong. She wept, but she went on, her words spilling out now in a torrent. He controlled the finances. He controlled where we were, who we liked, how we talked. And if we didn't do what he wanted, he punished us. Sometimes with silence, sometimes with anger, always with fear. Journalists wrote so quickly their pens scratched like razors. Shazers squirmed in their seats, eyes darting from Robyn to Kody. Kody's attorney leapt to his feet. Objection, this is character assassination. Nothing more. But the judge just shook his head. Overruled. Let her talk. Robyn clung to the edge of the stand, her knuckles white. You want the truth? The truth is I was complicit. I kept quiet when he harmed people I loved. I kept quiet when he destroyed this family. But I won't be quiet anymore. Kody plunged forward, his voice a roar. You think they'll believe you now? You think your tears will save you? His eyes gleamed with rage, his voice thick with venom. Without me, you're nothing. You're all nothing. The judge brought down the gavel. Mr. Brown, one more outburst, and you will be removed from this courtroom. It was too late though. The mask was lost. Everyone had witnessed it. Robyn sat shaking, but her voice was firm now. No, Kody, without you we might be free at last. The room exploded once more, shouts and whispers ringing off the walls. The gavel came down again, but the uproar refused to abate. And amidst the turmoil, Kody and Robyn met each other's gaze. Once wife and husband, now sworn enemies. The trial was no longer merely about money, or property, or even custody. It had evolved into something much more. It was a war for truth itself. And tomorrow, as everyone knew, the war would be over. The air in the courtroom remained thick with Robyn's bombshell. Even after order was restored by the gavel, there were whispers trailing like smoke. Each face in the gallery, each juror in the box, wore the same look of shock. Robyn Brown had just found her own husband guilty. When court opened again, Kody's attorney didn't lose a moment. He walked into the room's center,
his voice shouting with forced assurance. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what you have just seen was not truth. It was desperation. A battered woman under stress, manipulated by Christine and her cohorts into betraying the man who had protected her. But words alone, tears alone, do not constitute guilt. Kody sat stiff, his jaw clenched, his fists in his lap. His gaze never wavered from Robyn, but the hot glare was gone. Now it was icy, somber ice, under a strip of glass. Christine's attorney stood unruffled but unyielding. If you want evidence, evidence you shall have. Your Honor, we would like to enter into record a legally obtained recording by our client, Janelle Brown. All heads turned to Janelle. She sat upright, lips pressed together, a tiny flash drive held tightly in her hand. The judge furrowed an eyebrow. Counsel, is the recording authenticated? Christine's attorney nodded. Yes, Your Honor. It has been confirmed. The defense lawyer leapt to his feet. Objection, surprise testimony, Your Honor. The judge gave him a stern glance. This trial has been about truth since the beginning. If it is authenticated, it will be heard. The bailiff took the flash drive, inserting it into the courtroom's sound system. The room was silent. Even the air hung motionless. Then a voice filled the room. Kody's voice, low, sharp, unmistakable. You don't get it, Robyn. None of them matter. Not Christine. Not Janelle. Not Meri. They're obstacles. You and I, we're the future. The money, the property, the show. It all has to funnel through us. That's the only way this works. Gasps filled the gallery. Christine's hand went to her mouth. Meri sat transfixed, her eyes wide with incredulity. The tape played on, harsh and merciless. If they don't get in line, let them drown. We'll cut them out, starve them out if we must. They'll crawl back. They always do. And if not, good riddance. Less mouths to feed. Robyn hid her face in her hands. Tears flowed down her cheeks as the words rang out in the courtroom. Her own living room, now become a weapon against him. Kody's lawyer leapt to his feet. Your Honor, this is taken completely out of context. These are private conversations, spliced and manipulated. But the judge raised a hand. Sit down, counselor. The jury will judge context. The recording played on. Kody again, this time angrier. And if any of them ever think about turning against me, I'll bury them. They'll regret it. None of them have the guts to survive without me. The last words dissipated, and an awful stillness clung, heavy as a blanket suffocating the air. The judge began to cough. The jury will ignore any emotional response and consider only the material content. But even his words were tense, revealing the gravity of what they had all just heard. Kody leapt to his feet, pointing a trembling finger at Janelle. You think you've won? You think this will shatter me? His voice broke into a scream. That was private. You had no right. No right. The judge's gavel boomed. Mr. Brown, calm yourself or I will have you removed. But Kody wasn't hearing her. He spun to face Robyn, venom in his voice. You gave them that, didn't you? You let them in our home. You betrayed me. Robyn shook her head emphatically, crying, no, Kody. That was you. That was always you. I just finally let the truth out. Christine slowly got up, her gaze on him. Her voice was clear, firm, unyielding. Years you stood before us and said we were nothing without you. Today the world heard you confess it. You never loved us. You never guarded us. We were pawns to you. And now the game is done. The courtroom exploded. Shouting, gasping, flashes of cameras. Reporters scrambled for the exits to get out their stories. The judge pounded the gavel relentlessly, bellowing for order. Kody's mask cracked, his face contorted. For the first time at the trial, there was no outrage, no fire. It was only raw, seen panic. The jury was motionless, their eyes wide. The wives were finally united, their gaze pinning him, no longer in terror, but in defiance. And Robyn remained shaken, caught between sorrow and liberation, her sobs seeping through the handkerchief, still clutched in her fist. The voice of the judge finally pierced the tumult. This court will recess until tomorrow. Jurors are instructed not to discuss today's testimony outside this room. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down, but the courtroom was anything but quiet. Kody remained frozen, his eyes wild as bailiffs converged on him. His voice cracked into a hoarse rasp, barely above a whisper, but laced with venom. This isn't over. But everyone knew. It was. For the first time, the behemoth Kody Brown seemed diminutive. And tomorrow the decision would seal his fate. The next day, the courtroom was filled to capacity. What had happened the day before, the taping, the tantrum, the betrayal, had made national headlines. Journalists filled every empty seat, flashes lit up outside the courthouse, and the jurors entered with reserved faces. The judge's gavel resonated through the courtroom. We will now hear closing arguments. Counsel for the plaintiffs, you may proceed. Christine's attorney stood up slowly, fastening his jacket. He paused, gazing at the jury, allowing the silence to build until all eyes were upon him. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he started, his voice even, steady, deliberate. This case has never been about money. It has never been about property, fame, or headlines. It is about trust. The trust that was broken when Kody Brown valued manipulation over honesty, threats over love, control over family. He pointed toward Christine, Janelle, and Meri, sitting shoulder to shoulder. For years these women suffered in silence, thinking that they had no power, no voice. And for years Kody reminded them that they were nothing without him. But yesterday you heard the truth from his own lips. Not rumors, not hearsay. His voice taped in his own home, saying that his wives were roadblocks, saying that if they didn't bow down to him, they would drown, declaring that he would starve them out, cut them off, bury them if they resisted. He paused, letting the jury absorb the weight of those words. This is not the speak of a husband. This is the speak of a tyrant. And the bravery you saw, the bravery of Robyn Brown, who risked everything to speak the truth, has made one thing unmistakable. Kody Brown is not the victim. He is the abuser. And today you have the ability to tell him and the world that his tyranny of fear is finished. His tone grew cold, every word measured. We request you return a verdict in favor of justice, of freedom, and of the truth that could no longer be concealed. We request you find in favor of Kody Brown. He stepped back, and the ensuing silence was almost too much to bear. Then the defense attorney stood, his voice more biting, more forceful, more commanding. Ladies and gentlemen, he addressed them pacing in front of the jury box. Do not be blinded by drama. Do not be moved by tears that had been calculated for the cameras. What you witnessed yesterday was not justice. It was betrayal. A husband's private words taken out of context and used against him. Words that were never intended to leave the walls of his house, torn asunder and marched before you. He spun around, finger outstretched toward Christine. Ask yourselves this. Why now? Why after all these years do these women suddenly come together against him? Why do they suddenly call themselves victims, when for decades they lived in the same house, shared the same existence, enjoyed the same financial stability that Kody gave them? Because this is not about justice. This is about revenge. His voice increased, ringing out across the hall. They want to kill him. Ladies and gentlemen, they want to take his name, his livelihood, his reputation, and bury it with him. And they have discovered their tool in Robyn Brown, a wife so fractured, so manipulated by stress and guilt, that she turned her back on the man who gave her everything. He hunched forward, his voice low, a whisper. Do not allow tears to decide this case. Do not allow bitterness to recreate history. View the facts, and the facts only. Kody Brown provided. Kody Brown led. And yes, perhaps he spoke angry words, as any man might. But angry words do not convict him of guilt. They convict him of humanity. He straightened, his voice cracking like a whip. You need to put aside emotion. You need to put aside vengeance. And you need to bring in a verdict in his favor. The lawyer sat, his jaw clenched, his hand clenching the edge of the table. The judge shook his head gravely. Members of the jury, you have heard all the arguments. You will retire and deliberate. Your responsibility is to return a verdict based on the evidence alone. The bailiff rose and led the jurors out, each one individually. The massive door creaked shut behind them, its sound hollow. And then the room seemed to breathe a sigh. Christine grabbed hold of Janelle's hand, holding it fast. Meri bent over, speaking softly, so that only the other two could hear. Robyn sat alone, ashen, her fingers wringing the handkerchief, until the stuff started to rip. Kody did not move, however. His gaze tracked the departing jury, and then he sat back in his chair, lips tightening into the slightest smile. "They'll see through it," he grumbled under his breath. "They'll see through all of you." The gallery hummed with low conversation. Reporters scribbled desperately, outlining the tension in their notebooks. Outside, the crowd had grown to hundreds, chanting, bickering, waiting. Hours dragged on. The wives just sat there, their minds elsewhere. Kody's lawyers talked quickly in his ear, but his eyes never wavered from the door through which the jury had vanished. For behind that door, 12 people he had never met now had his future in their hands, and when they emerged, everything would be different. The courtroom had waited in silence for almost 5 hours. Each tick of the clock sounded like a hammer, each rustle of feet like thunder in the tense air. Christine, Janelle, and Meri were shoulder to shoulder, hands folded together, darting glances to the door with each creak. Robyn was seated apart, hunched forward, face chalky white, lips softly uttering prayers no one could hear. Kody, on the other hand, seemed abnormally serene, his arms crossed on his chest, chin high, a slight smile never wavering from his lips. To Kody, the longer the deliberation took, the more certain he became. At last, the wooden door creaked open. The bailiff's voice boomed out. "All rise. The jury has reached a verdict." The room remained, a shared gasp in each chest. The jurors returned, their faces impossible to read, their movements slow and deliberate. No one knew where their verdict had settled. The foreperson, a middle-aged woman, whose eyes seemed sharp enough to cut, held a folded scrap of paper. She passed it to the bailiff, who took it to the judge. The judge opened the slip and read down, his expression revealing nothing.
Please be seated, the judge told them. His gavel struck lightly, and the shuffle of bodies rang out. The silence that ensued was oppressive. The judge cleared his throat, his tone firm and measured. In the case of Brown versus Brown, on charges of coercive control, financial abuse, and emotional manipulation, we, the jury, find. The silence drew out like a taut wire waiting to snap. Christine's breath caught. Janelle grasped the table's edge so hard her knuckles turned white. Meri shut her eyes, tensing. Robyn let her head fall, tears silently dripping onto the table in front of her. Find the defendant, Kody Brown, guilty. Gasps rent the room. Christine clapped hands over her mouth, tears streaming as relief and shock met in her chest. Janelle sagged back in her chair, eyes welling, whispering, "It's over. It's finally over." Meri gave a sob that had resonated in the room, years of bottled shock releasing. Robyn, shaking, put hands to her face and cried. But Kody didn't blink. He leaned forward, his smirk turning into a sneer. His voice was low, venomous, but loud enough for the people standing closest to hear. "This isn't over," he spat. "You think you've won, but you haven't. You'll regret this, every single one of you." The judge's gavel came down. Order in the court. But the gallery was exploding. Reporters rushed for the doors, screaming into phones. Kody Brown found guilty. The wives' supporters cheered in victory, and others yelled furiously in Kody's defense. The air was pandemonium, thick with yells and tears, and the bright flash of cameras in the windows. The judge's voice boomed over the din. "Kody Brown, by order of this court, your access to all financial accounts associated with the plaintiffs is hereby taken away. Sentence will be imposed at a later time. In the meantime, you are remanded into custody." 2 bailiffs advanced. Kody's calm finally frayed. He stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You can't do this to me. I am the head of this family. I am the one who built everything. You..." His tirade was interrupted, as the bailiffs clamped his arms, steering him toward the door. He wriggled, yelling over his shoulder. "Christine, Janelle, Meri, Robyn, you'll crawl back. You'll see." The heavy doors closed behind him, and the courtroom dropped into stunned, echoing silence. Christine wiped her face, saying under her breath, "It's done. It's finally done." Janelle put an arm around her, holding her close. Meri reached across the table, hand extended to them. For the first time in years, the three women hugged, not in suffering but triumph. And then, every eye turned to Robyn. She was still, her face streaming with tears, her hand still holding the rumpled handkerchief. She gazed up at the women she had once been set against, her voice trembling. "I didn't betray him," she whispered. "I saved us, I saved all of us." The words suspended between them, delicate and heavy. Christine leaned across the table, pausing just a moment before covering Robyn's hand. Janelle did the same. Meri, her cheeks still damp with tears, brought hers last. For the first time, all four women were connected. Connected not as Kody's wives, but as survivors of his reign. Outside, the steps of the courthouse were thronged with reporters, their cameras poised to record the first words, the first tears, the first naked emotions. But within, at that moment, the women sat in silence. A silence that would shout louder than any headline ever had. For this was not the end of a family. It was just the start of their freedom. The narrator's tone is low, resolute and compelling. And with one word, guilty, the world of Kody Brown came crashing down. But what follows? A sentence that could take it all away from him. A family reforming out of the ashes. And a question that no judgment can provide an answer to. When the foundation of trust is broken, can those who remain ever be made whole again? Now it's your turn. What do you think? Was justice served? Or is this verdict ushering in an even darker chapter? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be watching to see which side you're on.